Gustave Courbet is known as the leader of the Realism art movement in France in the mid-19th century, when he started to paint simple everyday subjects in a realistic manner. Take for example this painting from 1850 entitled A Burial at Ornans, showing a funeral of his grand-uncle in his place of birth. Painted on an enormous canvas of 315 by 660 centimeters or some 10 by 22 feet. The subject of this video, however, is kind of an odd painting in his oeuvre, known as the artist's studio or the painter's studio, which is just like A Burial at Ornans, a very large painting measuring 361 by 598 centimeters, and both works are on display at the Musée d'Orsay in Paris. The full title Courbet gave to this work is The Painter's Studio, a Real Allegory Summing Up 7 Years of My Artistic and Moral Life, and he finished it in 1855. To make sense of this painting, look at the three separate parts of this painting, showing Courbet at the center, his friends and supporters on the right, and representatives from everyday life on the left. It differs from his other paintings as the aim of this work is to communicate his artistic vision to a large audience. At the beginning of Courbet's career, around the year 1840, the leading art styles in France were Neoclassicism and Romanticism. These styles were taught in the art academies across the country, which had a very rigorous program to teach people to produce high-quality art. Think about artists like Eugène Delacroix and Jacques-Louis David. Courbet, however, was not the type who liked to conform himself to the existing ideas. He did move from a small town to Paris to study art in a decent art studio, but he quickly left as he wanted to pursue his own ideas and vision, just continuing to study art on his own by studying foreign masters in the museums around him. He quickly figured out that he did not enjoy painting historical events or depicting scenes from literature, but that he just wanted to capture what he saw around him in life. As a beginning artist, this mainly meant self-portraits, but also scenes of peasants. Not art of and for the rich people, but just everyday life. This idea developed into the Realism art movement. When we look at this painting, the nude lady near the center is probably the first thing that catches the eye. There were quite some artists who enjoyed painting nudity at that time, but usually in the context of the goddess Venus or an odalisque, as in this painting from 1814 by Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres. But the nude woman is not the main interest of the artist here, as in the center we see Courbet painting an unidealized landscape. He actually ignores the nude woman behind him, as she is a representative of the academic art tradition that he despised. Instead, he values the opinion of a young boy who is not preoccupied with the traditional ideas of what art should look like. To Courbet, academic training spoiled the artist's eye. The better way to do art is represented by the boy on the floor, sketching away enthusiastically, unaware of his surroundings. And if you look carefully, there's another nude in this painting, albeit somewhat out of focus, which is the man to the left of the painting. It's actually not a real person, but a mannequin. And to Courbet, that was also a representation of academic art, where students learn to paint a human body in a variety of poses from a mannequin such as that one. And to Courbet, painting from a mannequin was very far from reality. On the left are people from all walks of life, like poor people, rich people, a priest, a hunter, a juggler and a merchant. And in between them are various attributes like a guitar, a dog and a dagger. All symbolic items that had no place in the realist vision of Courbet. And on the right are his shareholders, including well-known writers, artists and friends. But he ignores them all, as Courbet is an independent artist who just wants to paint reality as he observes it. person on the left side of the painting with a black top hat and a gravedigger's coat is actually the grandfather of Courbet, a man who fought during the French Revolution and who strongly influenced the independent views of Courbet on art and society. So it's kind of an homage that he included him in the painting. Another person present is the well-known French writer Charles Baudelaire, seated on top of a table reading a book. Just like the drawing kid, he is not paying attention to his environment. One more interesting element is the way Courbet depicted himself. You would think that if you are painting, you're facing the painting, meaning that Courbet would have shown himself from the back. But he was also a proud man, so he decided to show himself from the side. And if you think about it, it's a really awkward position when you are painting a canvas like he is pretending. The reception of this painting was not great, to say the least. He submitted it to the Paris World Exposition of 1855, but the painting was rejected. It did not represent what art critics consider proper art, and Courbet was obviously not surprised by this reception, as this was a representation of his artistic vision, critiquing the existing artistic styles. Other people believed that paintings should represent ideals and transfigure the world, depicting great people and heroic events, help people to improve their morals and inspire them, not to depict common life which they could see around them. On top of that, it was not done to expose children to nudity, so depicting a poor child next to a naked lady was quite scandalous. And as Courbet was hurrying to finish this painting in time to submit it to the World Exposition, he ran out of time. Initially, he had planned to put replicas of his other works in the background to properly present his studio. Instead, he just covered that part with some fairly indistinct colors, with the result being that it doesn't really look like his studio, despite it being part of the title. If you study the background carefully, you can still see some traces of the various canvases he planned to include on the wall. When this work was rejected from the World Exposition, Courbet decided to launch his own exhibition in a wooden pavilion right next to the entrance to the World Exposition, with a sign on the pavilion reading, Realism, G. Courbet. It was a bold move, but it did not really work out well, as few people came to see his work and the reviews were negative. So Courbet rolled up the enormous canvas and took it back to his studio, where it would stay until after his death in 1877. Only half a century later, it was acquired by the Louvre, and it is now considered one of the most spectacular works of the 19th century. Well, I hope you enjoyed this discussion of a pretty unusual painting, but one that has left its marks in art history. If you are near the Musée d'Orsay sometime, I can totally recommend visiting it and admiring this work and A Burial at Ornans in person. They are both quite impressive works. If you made it this far into the video, please consider liking and subscribing, and I hope to welcome you in another video on this channel soon. Thanks for watching.